Hello and welcome to Power Skills. We are talking about the number one power skill, self-mastery. But before we talk about self-mastery, we explored the self. We cannot master something that we not know. And we also discussed the fact that self-mastery begins with establishing a connection with your inner self. We explored the topic of the self through the lenses of culture and civilization, and I would like to explore the topic of self-mastery again through the lenses of culture, civilization, history, and some of the greatest story humans have told themselves. Let's begin. Greatest that the conquest of 1,000 battles is the conquest of the self. This is what Buddhists say. And in Buddhism, conquering the self or mastering the self is the greatest accomplishment. Actually, the entire Buddhist teaching is built around this idea of mastering yourself, mastering your mind, becoming an observer of yourself and the mind. But it's not just Buddhism. When the mind is still, the universe surrenders, says Lao Tzu, a famous Chinese philosopher. Someone who is one of the most famous philosophers, and his book, Tao Te Ching, is one of the most famous philosophy books. When the mind is still, the universe surrenders. Confucius says that he who masters himself is the greatest warrior. Linked to the Stoic ideals, to the ideas of Stoicism, this tells us that inner discipline is the greater discipline, and all victories begin with inner discipline. Know thyself is an inscription of the Apollo Temple in Delhi, in Greece. And also Socrates mentions that knowing oneself is one of the greatest knowledge one can acquire, which links back to our previous idea that before you master the self, you need to know the self. But let's look at something else. Viktor Frankl says that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom. Now, I know this might sound way too philosophical for you, but stay with me and I will explain why I'm sharing all of this. And also there is a bonus assignment in your workbook related to those quotes, to exploring more about the cultures and the people who are authors of those quotes and what that means for discipline and for yourself. But now let's explore a couple of final quotes and ideas, and then we move to the idea of self-mastery. An African proverb says that when there is no enemy within, no one from the outside can hurt you. I think by now you get the point. Over cultures and over different centuries, people have come to the same conclusion. Mastering yourself is where it all begins. Regardless of whether you're going to be a teacher, an AI expert, a programmer, a designer, a content creator, a marketeer, a doctor, a physiotherapist, fitness instructor, it all begins with mastering yourself, and all other skills begin with mastering yourself. So mastering yourself is the first principal skill which will allow you to develop other skills. Self-mastery can sound like a mystical concept, something that it's out of grasp, something that it's difficult to understand. But as I mentioned, self-mastery is simply the first principal skills. The meta skills and every other skill comes on top of it. And we can describe self-mastery in the simplest possible terms with two examples. The first one is you want to become a neurosurgeon. You are reading a 700-page book which is on the brain and how the brain functions. It's a very intense reading, it's super complex, and it's also slightly boring. So instead of watching Netflix or instead of checking your phone every 5 minutes, you place your attention on that book and you read for 45 minutes uninterrupted. After those 45 minutes, you make notes on everything that you've read and then you quiz yourself, or you get ChatGPT to quiz you. What you've done is you have mastered your attention. You have consciously and deliberately put your attention in an important task, a task that matters to you for a period of time. This is self-mastery. Sounds easy? stay with me and you will see that this is the most difficult skill in human history. But let's look at another example of self-mastery. Let's imagine that you are working on an important art project and you receive an excruciating feedback. Instead of drowning in emotions and feeling depressed, you experience the emotion, but then you are able to place your energy into improving, into making this art project better, getting many no's, but finally getting a yes before you start to exhibit it. So self-mastery is managing your attention and your energy. And why do I say this is the most difficult skill? Let me share a very personal example of how difficult it can be to master your attention and your energy, because so much of what we do on autopilot, and our brain loves habit. We are a creature of habit. Every time that our brain steps out of the habit, it has to spend more energy. And our brain is super greedy. He does not want to spend energy. Our brain is so greedy that it would do almost anything not to spend energy. So let's go to the personal example. In preparation for this video and for this module, I decided to do a 7-day social media detox, which means that for 7 days I won't be going on social media. On the first day, because I can check my phone and I can see how I have spent my time on my phone, on the first day I noticed that I've spent 7 minutes on social media and I was not even aware of it. So see how important that is. Although I had made a conscious choice to detach and detox from social media without even realizing it, on complete autopilot, I have spent 7 minutes on social media and I was not even aware of it. The second day, I realized that as I manage a Facebook group and I have not posted there and I have not been there, I felt a bit scary. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What is it happening? So I decided to quickly go there and just share that I'm on a digital media detox, but this was again going to social media. So pretty much my first attempt to detach and detox from social media for 7 days failed. And you would say, yeah, this is only you. I can do it. Anyone can do it. I've made this experiment with several of my clients. And by the way, these are not my clients who are starting their career, but my manager and entrepreneurs clients. And almost everyone failed. Why? As I said, because we do so many things on autopilot and because it requires so much energy to be aware and to manage your attention. However, I made a second attempt on detoxing from social media for 7 days and it was a complete success. Actually, it was such a success that I took all the principles from this experiment and I applied it to building habits that actually matter to me. So let's look at what I did the first time and what I did the second time and what worked well and what didn't work well. So the first time I decided to do a social media detox, it was a very spontaneous, it was a very impulsive decision. I didn't think it through. I just said, yes, I can do it. Of course I can do it. And then I'll tell the people from Catapult Your Career Power Skills that I did it. So everyone can do it. And I didn't plan it through. The second time, I started with awareness. This is not going to be easy, but I'm determined to do it. I'm really determined to do it, and I want to be the master of my attention, of my energy, of my thoughts. It's rooted in my identity. It's rooted in who I am, and I am very much aware of my why. This is no longer just an experiment to show others what I can do. This is a manifesto to myself. And this is saying to myself, I can manage my energy and my attention. So I knew my why. I knew it was going to be difficult. And then I planned. So the first most important point, which I cannot stress enough, is that I anchored my decision to do a 7-day social media detox in my identity, in who I am. And I had a very, very strong commitment to do it. And I think commitment and your intention to do something is so important that it could literally make or break the success of whatever it is you're doing. And I had 100% commitment and I decided I'll go all in. So this was the first difference. The second difference is that I planned. I went ahead of time in my groups and I posted before the detox that I'm going to be on detox. So everything which is like things that I needed to do, I did them beforehand. Also, I created a structure. I had a basket for my phone, something like this. And I would put that basket in the hallway, not in the living room, not in the kitchen, not in the bedroom, in the hallway. And I would turn the sound on. I usually have my sound off so that if someone calls, I can pick up. So phone was away, but I also had my computer. And what I did with my computer is that I had opened all the possible tabs for the day that I think I would need. And I was very, very conscious if I am going to open social media, and I didn't. Also, when we speak about willpower, there is great debate whether willpower is limited or unlimited. I believe willpower can be trained as a muscle in the long run, but within the day we have limited amount of willpower. I was already using a lot of willpower to detox from social media, which means that I was a bit easy on myself when it came to physical exercise or to not eating sweets. So if we want to build a habit and we also use our willpower for many other things, it's not going to work. We need to prioritize. When we are building our willpower, we always need to have our number one priority, and priority is single anyway, the one thing where we say, this is non-negotiable. So to me, the detox was non-negotiable. And yes, I ate some ice cream throughout the detox because I believe it's impossible to exert willpower in all areas of your life. And then I did something, and I did it by writing, which is super, super important. I did the WOOP principle: wish, obstacle, outcome, plan. So my wish was to detox from social media for 7 days. Obstacles, this is very important. I made a list of all the possible obstacles that could come my way. And then we have WOOP. The first O is obstacle, the second one is opportunities. I wrote every possible opportunity to tackle the obstacles. So pretty much I wrote if, then intentions. If I feel compelled to open my Facebook, I will do that. If I feel compelled to open my Instagram, I will do that. And here is what I did. I thought of behaviors that I enjoy and are useful. So I said to myself, when I feel compelled to open my Facebook, I will use my oracle cards, which are complete bullshit, but it's fun. I like it. It's fun. And so I did a lot of games and plays with my oracle cards. And I know this is like nonsense, but I enjoyed it. It was nice. If I feel compelled to open Instagram, I'm going to read this one book on systemic approach in human resource manager. So this is useful. And I progressed a lot with this book. So pretty much I had already prepared for all the possible obstacles, and I had clear if then intentions. And the if then intentions were a balance between something that I enjoy doing, it brings almost zero value to my life, but I enjoy it, it's happiness, and something that it's useful and brings value to my life. So whooping, wish, obstacle, opportunity, plan. So plan is what you're going to do. Whooping, when you want to develop a habit, is very, very important. Research shows that when our brain is prepared for the upcoming obstacles, there is 40% greater chance that we're going to overcome those obstacles. And if then intentions help greatly. So this is how my first attempt looked like. Spontaneous, not knowing why, not planning my environment, not knowing what to do when obstacles arrive. This is how it looked the second time. Grounded in identity and strong why, designing my environment, so putting the phone away, planning for obstacles, and having if-then intentions. And this is very important. So self-mastery might look as something which is super, super simple, but it's actually not. If you think of Luke Skywalker, the Star Wars character, when he goes to planet Dagobah to Yoda to master the Force, mastering the Force is actually mastering his attention. When you think of Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins and when he joins the League of Shadows to train, he's developing self-mastery. When you think of Doctor Strange and how he goes to the Himalaya, he's also developing self-mastery. So self-mastery is regarded by all civilization and almost all great story as the most important skill in human existence. And it looks like it's very simple, but when you start developing habits, when you start building discipline, you will see that it's not that simple. However, we are blessed that science now tells us what are the principles that will allow us to build self-mastery. Grounding it in identity, designing our environment, this is big. Planning for obstacles, having clear if-then intentions. So this is self-mastery in a nutshell, and I would like you now to go to your workbook and to your program and see the challenge for this lesson, for this step, and do it. And I also want to do it with the awareness and knowledge of the things that I've shared in this video. And also, I would like to say that in this level of power skills, you can journal and reflect, and the more you do it, the better results you see for yourself. So I invite you to go to the challenge in your workbook and do it now.